You don't have to be the most pliable, the most flexible. You don't have to be the strongest. You don't have to have the still mind right now. You can be with anxiety. You can be with depression. You can be with tense intention and just like roll out the mat, get out your meditation seat. And if that's all you do, awesome, because the intention was there. And give yourself the space to arrive as you're ready.
Welcome to the Embrace and Expand podcast, where we talk about everything from spirituality, self-development, relationships, mindfulness, wellness, and everything that will help you embrace all that you are so you can expand into the best version of yourself. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Embrace and Expand podcast. Our guest on this podcast is someone I recently discovered while in the pursuit of furthering my own journey around cultivating inner peace and wellness. After sustaining an injury in 2015, he left corporate America and ventured into the world of wellness. He has studied under some world-renowned teachers such as Jack Kornfield, Tara Brach, and Jessie Lee Parker, just to name a few, turning him into a yoga teacher, a QiGong instructor, meditation teacher, and leadership coach. His injury helped him to catalyze change in his life, as well as embodying these teachings and education on a cellular level, leading him to the realization that the less stress he experienced in life, the less pain he also experienced. He is truly the embodiment of compassion, peace, joy, and absolute passion. So I introduce you to Christopher Peña. Christopher, welcome to the Embrace and Expand podcast.
Hey, thank you so much, Adam, for having me and creating the space to just share more about my journey. It truly is an honor to have met you and to be able to connect in this way right now. Wow, you nailed it. I was like thinking about like what and how do I begin to express who I am? Because there's this version of me before 2015, before I hurt my back. And then there's this version of me who currently lives literally in the present moment due to a lot of the practices that you mentioned that I began to tap into and uncover. Like living with chronic pain, living with different wisdom. It's a lot to balance in this world that wants to, or the society that wants to keep pushing forward, when sometimes the best thing we can do is take a breath, pause, and reflect on our current state of being. Had I known that in 2015, when I broke my back working for corporate America, would my life be different? I don't know. Though what I do know is this is where I'm supposed to be right now, learning from these different teachers you mentioned, and also sharing these gifts with the world so we can all move into a place of peace, calm, longevity, health, and wellness.
Mm-hmm. That's so fantastic. And I know when we first encountered each other, I was coming to you to learn more about the practice of QiGong, which is going to be a big part of our conversation today. I'm sure among many other things as well. And it's interesting at how when you meet certain individuals who have gone through a challenging path. It's the things that you've encountered through your injuries and through, multiple injuries throughout the year that have forced you to have to come back to your practice, forced you to have to come back to yourself and sometimes shift and pivot based upon those in order to discover really more aspects of yourself. And I really appreciate you putting QiGong in such a way of it coming back to our true nature and coming back to who we actually are and how we're meant to show up in the world. So we kind of tell the listeners who maybe aren't familiar with QiGong kind of what the practice is and really the philosophy around it.
Yeah, absolutely. So QiGong is a practice that came into my life last year, March of 2022. And I give blessings and thank God, thank Creator, thank the universe for really sharing this gift with me. A lot of the Qigong practices that I'm tapping into, a lot of the Taoist tradition that I'm learning dates back over 5,000 years ago. And it's all about returning back to self, returning back to the subtle body energies that flow through us in each and every moment, while also tuning into what and how we interact with the world outside of us. So classic, the yin yang symbol, I think everybody has seen that everywhere. And also, like, how do we embody it? How do we connect with it? How do we move with it? That's what QiGong really allows us, and a lot of the other mindful practices allow us to return back to center. So, for example, when you look at the yin yang, you see the yin on one side, you see the yang on the other. And I truly believe that the gift is getting into that middle line, allowing yourself to understand harmony between hot and cold, understanding harmony between the sun and the moon, understanding harmony between what the different elements, like we in qigong Taoist practices, you understand the metal elements, you understand the water element, the fire element, the earth element, and how these all play into our existence internally and externally. So you might notice, like, people who have practiced, you might notice people moving real slowly in qigong practice and tai chi practices. And it's that slow movement that allows us to go inward and really tap into the micro, while also uncovering how we exist within the macro. Again, the yin to the yang. How do you harmonize with it all? And one thing that I learned through my sensei, Jesse, who is truly like one of the kindest, most compassionate people I've ever met, is that it's all about tapping into that childlike play, allowing the youthfulness to come out of you. We have learned a number of different practices to help us slow down. And through those practices, we've learned structure. We've learned what proper alignment is. And then from there, Jesse's like, express yourself. You know, we learn the same practice, we learn the same structure and alignment. And Jesse really tells us to express ourselves through the movement. And as somebody who is 6'5", my movement might look a little bit different because of just the stature. And it's important to be able to just surrender into that you may look different from everybody else, and you are all still tapping into the same practices together through those subtle differences and changes.
That's one of the things I really appreciated on our first call together was as we were going through the practice that you showed me, you really expressed the importance of I'm doing the practice this way, but allow your body to move how your body wants to move. And for me, that immediately gave me a sense of safety and integrity within your practice because you were honoring who I am as a physical vessel, as well as who I am as an energetic vessel as well, and what way that wants to express out into the world. And that's just kind of what sold me on diving deeper into the Qigong practice. And I actually signed up for Jesse's Taoist 45-day Taoist yoga program.
Cool.
And I'm still working my way through that. But being able to have that felt sense of what it should feel like in my body, not necessarily what somebody's telling me it should feel like, but really allowing myself to feel it fully and then express however that wants to feel.
And you're touching on something really beautiful about the Taoist practice is there is a lot of Buddhist influence. And what I mean by that is like the Buddhist meditation, insight meditation, Vipassana meditation, where we begin to understand our subtle body energy. And when we understand our subtle body energy through meditation, and what I mean by that is like noticing, like if you just tap your hands right now and you just tap, and then, you know, after a few moments, you get the palm, you get the back of the hand, then you close your eyes. And what do you feel in the hand that you just tapped?
You can feel that energy flowing. You can feel tingling, almost like, and it feels different from one hand to the other, the hand that was tapping versus the hand that was being tapped.
Yes. Yeah, and that's like the style of meditation that as you go deeper into qigong practices, you're meditating through movement. So as you move, you feel the sensations of the body. And this is where the Buddhist practice comes in. We don't attach to the sensations. We don't go, "Oh, I want more of this, so let me see how I can bring more of this goodness into my life." And we also don't say, "Oh gosh, like I'm having this sensational thing in my neck that feels like pain. I'm going to avoid that at all costs." We understand it. We work with it. We don't judge it. We describe it so the next time it comes up, we kind of know a little bit more about it, though we move with it. We move through it and allow that subtle body energy to flow. So like the Qigong practice goes deeper into meditation just through soft breathing and through awareness and truly becoming the witness of your experience.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I kind of want to take a little bit of a rewind to what you were talking about, the elements. And one of the things that Jesse brings up in his teachings when explaining the elements is how when we find harmony within working in all of those elements, we find harmony within ourselves. But they have to work in a very specific order with one another. Do you want to talk about what happens when they start working in disorder with one another?
Oh, yeah, that would be definitely the easiest because I'm still trying to understand like how the inner elements work. For example, your lungs have a mother organ, and your lung is also the son to another organ. And your lung is an element. So I believe the lung element is metal. So when you are looking at your health and vitality, when your elements, your inner elements are out of alignment and you are disordered, that can lead towards disease. It can lead to having a mind that is controlling the show, where instead of letting the heart have the space, letting the gut have the space, letting your organs or like the kidneys produce longevity and vitality. So as you move towards organization, you move towards this circuit system that is flowing optimally. And I know when we were practicing, I shared with you the Dragon and Tiger Qigong. That practice actually helps to bring the head into the heart. So when the mind is racing, if your mind is racing, that is a sign that something's a little bit off. There's no judgment because there's many catalysts that get our mind to be like allow our mind to head into that space. Though can we awaken to it and choose to tap back into, drop the head back into the heart, to connect with our inner elements of like, and the elements come through Qigong. It also shows up in Ayurveda. So these traditions are not just exclusive to one philosophy, which blows my mind every single time I learn more about these different cultures.
It's interesting that you touch on that because I did another podcast with a gentleman named Roman Hannes, who runs a center called Paititi Institute down in Peru. And we touched a little bit on the fact of how it's interesting that there's so many different cultures across all the various different continents that are not only separated by distance, but a lot of times separated by time. And somehow they came to the same realizations and conclusions. It just baffles me that that's even possible, that, you know, cultures that are separated by thousands and thousands of miles and sometimes thousands of years, depending upon when they showed up on the globe, they found that there is something about learning to work with the elements that we are a part of, that exist within inside of ourselves, to learn to work with the breath and the body in such a way that it can increase or decrease our vitality based upon how we are breathing and how we are living.
Truly. And that, like, I like to think about Pangea. I really like to put myself like way back when at one point, like all of the continent was like the entire world was together and connected.
Right.
And what occurred then? And then this separation happened where these different continents broke up and shifted. And now these same people are looking at the stars for guidance. I also like to think about how the pyramids in Egypt are aligned with the stars. In Peru, Machu Picchu, like you can look through a window and see the Seven Sisters. So a lot of these ancient cultures were connecting to the stars, the heavens outside of the earth. And who knows, maybe that connection created this like divine downloads, which shared this wisdom with everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really fascinating. It's like, I think it's Orion's belt that the pyramids of Giza are in alignment with. And then another interesting fact is like Stonehenge, for example. There's certain archways within Stonehenge that the sun perfectly aligns with on the spring and summer equinox. Or no, sorry, the summer and winter solstice. Right at sunrise, it's like, boom, right there as a window peeking through. So I find it interesting at how people who are skeptical of like astrology or yielding wisdom from the stars and from the solar system, yet that's what all the ancient cultures went off of, was how can we align ourselves with what's happening in the solar system and get in harmony with that, instead of thinking that we are the fundamental center and now we have to base everything off of what we are doing, not what actually is collectively happening within our entire universe.
Yeah. And that, like, I'm really thinking about the mind, like how the mind shows up to like, no, I am the most important thing here right now. It doesn't matter that we're on a giant ball spinning with no perceived direction. Like we don't know, though when you slow down enough and can begin to really see the synchronicity and feel into the cosmic flow of support, then it's like, wait a second, maybe something is guiding all of this. And our expression helps to guide us in the direction that keeps us moving towards Dharma or towards our own karma.
Yeah, very much so. So I think this is a great point to ask you the signature embrace and expand question of, Christopher, what did you have to embrace in your life in order to expand into the person you are today?
I had to, one moment really sticks out, and I had to accept and embrace that I did not have to let my past control my future. And when I began to accept that, I was like, wait a second, I can make choices for myself that it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. And when I began to choose myself, began to choose and notice health and wellness were like important to me, my life transformed in a way that I could have never imagined. And had I not realized that I could let my past go, I would still be trapped until that moment of realization. And who knows when that could have been. Like the catalyst for this was me breaking my back and then having a friend see that I was struggling and ask if he could come over. And I'm like, yeah, dude, of course. This is the first time we've ever like hung out. And he looked at me and he's like, all right, like I'll come over. This will be great. He gets to my place later and he pulls tarot. And this is the first time I've ever experienced tarot. And he's like, do you just trust this? I'm like, yes. And my eyes were on the deck. This is the first time I've experienced something like this, really tapped into spirituality. And I'm like, I am here for this. So I'm staring down at the cards. He's shuffling them. I'm putting my energy into it. And then he pulls the card that was like, you can let your past go. And I was like, holy shit, that was just it. And I just ran with it from there to this point, like of here we are now, 8 years later. Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I love that you bring up the tarot cards, because I work pretty religiously, and it's been for really religiously about the last 6 months, but I started working with them for about a year ago with tarot and oracle cards. And now, like, every morning I pull 3 cards, and depending upon what cards come up is what I journal on for that day. And it allows me to think about it. And one of the cards that I pulled this morning was the Mother card, and I pulled it in the past position. So I pulled a past, present, future card pull. And it was basically saying that the mother is a typical archetype, but it can be either the mother or the father in this instance. But when it's in the past, it asks us to look at our past and see how we are allowing the past to dictate what is happening in the present. And based on what's happening in the present, because of that dictation, actually affects what's going to come to us in the future. So it blows me away at every time I have a podcast interview at how aligned the cards that come up are with what comes up in the conversation, because that's exactly what you're saying, is to recognize that as long as we continue to be attached to the past, we are going to repeat what happened in the past. And I think we'll touch here in a little bit on your coaching program, the feedback loop, and how this actually plays a huge part in that, of you're allowing this thing to continue to repeat and repeat and repeat, which will then magnetize other situations to continue to come to you that are going to be like that. But when you finally say, okay, enough is enough, I'm ready for something different, and instead you create a pattern interrupt and choose to go down a different path, you then choose a different thing that can start attracting to you because you've stopped that feedback loop.
Exactly. And, after I got that message from my brother, I was like, wow, I can make some serious change. So I began journaling. I began to understand that I was making choices in the present moment that would obviously be harmful in the future. And I noticed that through journaling, because I began to witness my own patterns, and I wasn't judging myself. I was like, okay, this is where I can shift. This is where I can change. And with that, I began to I worked with this mantra that, I really focused on, like, how does my future self want to feel? How can my present self set my future self up? And it could be small, like washing the dishes at night so you don't have to do them in the morning. Or it can be a bit more expanded and going to the gym every day. So in the future, I can still move, I can pick things up, I'm strong, going to yoga every day so I can remain flexible. And like, those are things you can do every day that set yourself up in the future while also setting yourself up in the present. Whereas if you go to the bar every night, like, what's your future self going to be like? It's going to be just a little bit different. And there's no judgment there if that's what your lifestyle is all about. Though, if you want to change your lifestyle and shift it, we have the opportunity to look at ourselves right now without any judgment and choose what's going to support us in the future. How can we serve ourselves? How can we be of service to our future self? And that comes at no cost. The cost usually comes later.
Yeah. Yeah, I really appreciate you touching on the fact of going to the gym, but also doing yoga. Because as a previous CrossFit coach, I saw it all the time in the gym with people who would train really hard and their whole focus was to just lift heavy, but then would do no mobility outside of the gym and wouldn't understand why I'm able to do certain moves and positions in a very different way than they were able to do it. But that was because I was continuing to do mobility outside of the gym, aside from just lifting heavy things. And I think it's a great example of you can't be too hyper-focused in one area. You have to create a broad set of tools that you use on a individual basis and a varied basis to allow yourself to have the strength that you need, yes, but you also need that mobility so that you can stretch in the right way or you can move in the right way and thus prevent injury when lifting something heavy.
Yes. And, this reminds me about Jesse talks about how transformation comes from the tendons. And that comes through tapping into pliability. That comes through slowing it down. And what I'm hearing you describe is the yin and the yang, like strength and mobility, movement and stillness. And it's funny because like this morning, when I go to the gym, I have this like routine, like, okay, I'm going to get on the bike, move my legs, move through my hips, really work my root chakra. And then from there, I go stretch, and my stretching is focused on how I'm going to lift for the day. So I'm like in this routine, in this flow. I'm like, oh man, I feel really connected. I feel really awake. I feel really alive. And then I go into the locker room. I see this guy that has a shirt that says beers and barbells. I'm like, cool. And then this dude goes out right when he changed. He goes out to the bench, throws up 6 plates. And I'm standing there like, wow, he is going from locker room to bench pressing over 270 pounds.
Wow.
And like, I could see his stiffness. I could see him like, yes, you can lift this, but like when you tap into the ligaments where the muscles connect, you can then use your muscle to its full potential. So when we stretch, we're lengthening our muscles. When we strengthen, we're shortening our muscles. And also when we stretch, we're bringing alignment. So say if we bench press, we're going to shorten our chest through our bench press, which might lengthen our back, which might cause rolled shoulders. So cool, but like now you're not really functioning optimally because you have rolled shoulders, your heart is closed, you have longer back muscles. Whereas when you like effectively lift, your chest stays open and your back stays open and your shoulders stay stacked over your hips and everything's balanced and you are able to access the most power within your being. There's yin yoga, which yin yoga is a mix of yoga and Taoist practices. When you're in yin yoga, when you're tapping into QiGong, for some of these seated practices, you're sitting in hip openers for like 40 to 50 minutes before even changing how your legs are. And what that's doing is getting into the tendons. And most specifically, I love bringing this up. It's the Golgi tendon. The Golgi tendon is that connection point that your muscle attaches to, the ligament attaches to the bone or into that structure. But when you sit in yin yoga, you're getting into that tendon because you're sitting there for so long. Whereas if you're moving through a vinyasa class, you are lengthening and shortening muscles, but you're not getting to the depths. You're really working the superficial side of it, which is amazing to complement the strength training. So the kind of like has it all. You want to have this stillness, yin practice of very little movement, though deep stretching in combination with kind of movement that gets your mobility and your whole body moving alongside strength training, which is more stillness, pick things up, put things down.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So anything else that you'd like to touch on as far as your Qigong practice or even your yoga practice and how the combination of those two has really helped you achieve kind of that inner stillness and inner calm?
Yeah, I guess like the thing that I want to express is if you've never done any of this ever, that's cool. And if you're interested in doing it, that's cool. You can just do it. You can look something up online. You don't have to be professional. You don't have to be the most pliable, the most flexible. You don't have to be the strongest. You don't have to have the still mind right now. You can be with anxiety. You can be with depression. You can be with tense intention, and just like roll out the mat, get out your meditation seat. And if that's all you do, awesome, because the intention was there. And give yourself the space to arrive as you're ready. It's different. Like, these Eastern practices are much different than what Western society says. It's like Western society is like, we got to be perfect the first time. And through like some of these Eastern practices, perfection is exactly how you're showing up. And perfection is just something that's cultivated. Each and every moment, we show up for ourselves and then show up for the practice.
One of my friends back in Washington who owns a yoga studio, he always says in his practices that, remember, it's practice, not performance.
Yes.
And I actually started using that in my coaching classes back when I was working at CrossFit Lake Stevens, because just reminding everybody that, look, we all want to do this perfect. We all want to have, you know, a 300-pound squat or, you know, whatever your weight is. But it takes time to get there. It's actually better to lift at a lighter load and have a better form, and then slowly build up that weight, continuing to keep that form perfect, or as close to perfect as we can, or as close to perfect as our body allows us to. And there's certain types of lifts that I just don't do anymore because I know my body doesn't actually like it.
Mm.
And it took me a bit to have to get over my perfectionist mentality and my ego of being like, no, everybody else can do this, so I should be able to do it too. For example, the snatch, where you're basically lifting a weight straight up over your head from the ground. And it's a beautiful movement for people that can do it really well.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a lot of stress on the shoulders. And I would always feel just a ton of tension in my shoulders after doing it, even though my form was really good. And I finally had to just say, enough is enough. I'm just not going to do that one anymore. And now it's been like 8 months since I did the snatch, and my shoulders feel better than they have in ages.
Wow.
Because I actually listened to what my body was trying to tell me. And so I would say to any of you listening that if you go to the gym and you're trying to do certain movements, or you go to a CrossFit class or a yoga class or whatever it is, and the instructor is telling you to do something, but your body is giving you a different answer, listen to your body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, listen. And that's the wisdom. That's the cues of how we are and what we want to choose to do to move forward. And when we listen to our body and we choose ourselves, we're telling ourselves we're sovereign. We're telling ourselves that we are autonomous beings, and that we know what we need and what will best serve ourselves physically. Then that moves into mentally, emotionally, and spiritually.
So, Christopher, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Do you have like a quick practice that you could take our listeners to help them kind of feel into their body, maybe feel into their subtle energies, and just give them a taste of what it means to cultivate these stillness practices?
I think like the best thing that we could tap into possibly would be just a quick like body mindfulness, and body meditation.
Awesome.
Yeah. Because like I would love to get into the flow, but it's like I don't know how to really effectively share those cues.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So yeah, I'll set the space up for this. Just closing your eyes wherever you are. If it's safe, you can choose to sit, stand, or walk. Just listening for the bell. Just taking a few moments to quiet the mind, letting go of how you got here, where you may be heading. Just tuning into your body. Just feeling into the feet. Noticing any of the pressure on the earth. Feeling into the knees. The hips. The sit bones. Noticing what comes up as you travel up the spine, feeling into the back of the heart. The shoulders soften. Noticing the elbows, where the hands are landed. Feeling more into your space, into the body. Softening any tension around the shoulders, the throat, the neck, the jaw. Relaxing the tongue away from the roof of the mouth. Softness in the eyes. Feeling the crown of the head. Feeling into the body. Noticing any sensations that come up. Just go a little bit deeper, listening in for your breath. Feeling the in-breath through the nose, the mouth. Noticing how the chest rises on the inhale. Falls on the exhale. If you really wanted to feel it, you could bring one hand to the heart, the other to the belly. Just noticing what it feels like on the in-breath. What it feels like on the out-breath. The air might feel cold on the inhale. A bit warmer on the exhale. And noticing if the mind wants to wander. If it does, just invite it back into the body, back into the breath, without any judgment. Feeling into the feet again. Noticing the knees and the hips. Feeling rooted at the base of the spine. Noticing how the body naturally breathes itself. Maybe from this depth, you can feel the clothing on the skin, the hair on the head, the sound through the ears. Softening any obvious tension in the body. Around the jaw, the eyes. And silently repeating the following phrases. May I be peaceful. May I be healthy and well in mind, body, and spirit. May I be free from suffering. May I be loving awareness.
Such a beautiful practice.
Thanks, brother. How are you feeling?
Oh, very much at peace. I don't know about you listeners, that if you followed, I could notice at the very beginning my heartbeat being at a certain level. And then by the end of it, being very much at a different pace, much more still, much more in alignment with my own body. And then even more beautiful to close it with a little bit of teachings from Ram Dass there. I am
The
loving
Baba
awareness.
the Baba is always with us.
Yes, yes. Even though he left us in the physical, he is still very much here in the spiritual.
Yep, sure is. Well, thanks for asking me to share practice. I wasn't expecting it. It's like, gotta tap in real fast.
Yeah, and you did it very quickly. It's definitely one of the things that I'm trying to do more often when I bring people on who actually hold space for other people and have some of these wisdom teachings within themselves, is to offer the listeners the ability to experience what you have to offer. And then if it resonates, they have something more to go off of if they want to actually reach out and see if they can dive deeper into your teachings. So with that being said, Christopher, do you want to tell us a little bit about your offerings and kind of what you are bringing out into the world?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much for giving the space to be able to share more. So, I just shared a lot about yoga philosophy, Taoist philosophy, Buddhist philosophy. And yes, like at my core, that's who I am. And those are my lifestyles. And another passion of mine is being a coach. I love holding space for others to tap into their own lifestyle, to help them figure out what it is that lights them up, what it is that creates passion for themselves. And my partner Rachel and I, we just recently this year launched our coaching business called Feedback Loop Coaching. And what Feedback Loop Coaching is it's an entity, it's the muse that allows us to be able to witness what external life are we bringing into us, and how is that influencing our choices? How is that And with that feedback loop, we get to use our core principles of awareness, bringing awareness to how we want to feel, how we want to be, how we want to act. We then get to evaluate what's most in alignment with who we are. And are the choices we're currently making helping our future selves? And from there, from that evaluation, we get to see all the options and then get to choose how we move forward. We get to make the choice. Do we choose karma? If you want to choose karma, cool. We can understand why we're choosing karma. If you want to choose dharma, yes, let's go for that too. But we leave it up to you, the client, to make the choice that's most in alignment with who you are. Back to understanding your feedback loop, like, what do you listen to, what do you look at, what do you eat, what do you smell, tapping into the sensory experience. Where are the places that you go, who do you hang out with, what type of messaging do you receive from your friends, from your family, from the news, from the radio, from the music that you listen to, and how is this messaging influencing the very person who you are trying to become?
That's fantastic. Yeah, and I get a lot of people that have asked me outside of the podcast of why do I give people the opportunity to talk about their offerings when I myself am a coach. And one of my original wants for creating the podcast was to try and draw more clients to myself. But I've started to realize I have a limited capacity. I can only help so many people. And at the same time, not everybody resonates with me. So that's why I like to have people share their offerings as well, because we all have a unique gift to be able to offer the world. We all have a unique voice and we all have unique life experiences. So, if you're listening and you're like, Adam, I've loved your podcast so far, but there are definitely some things that you've talked about that I don't 100% resonate. But if you resonate with what Christopher has had to say, reach out to him. If you feel like you are at the point in your life where you do need a coach, there's many of us out there, and we all have different ways of working with our clients to help to get you fundamentally all to the same place of being more aligned with your authentic self, living life based on your terms and how you wish to see your dreams and realities meet together.
That's so beautiful. There's space for it all.
Yeah.
There is space for it all, and we're all just here in service, trying to help one another get to return home, return to their home. And whatever your home looks like, feels like, we're there for it.
Yeah. And at least for me, that's part of my continued work in developing an abundance mindset, is to realize that as much as society tries to train us about competition, we are not in competition when with one another. When we are living in true alignment and we are living from a place of abundance, we recognize that there is more to offer for each and every one of us. So yeah, let's hold each other up. Like, let's help each other to be the best version of ourselves, have the most abundant life we possibly can in whatever way that looks like.
Yes, that abundance mindset, I like to think of it as wealth consciousness. And Deepak Chopra wrote this lovely book called Creating Affluence. And it's an A to Z guide in understanding how wealth consciousness can change your life and everybody's life around you.
It's beautiful. I haven't heard that term wealth consciousness before. I really like that. That's a great spin on the abundance mindset, because it is about cultivating more consciousness. It's about cultivating more consciousness and wealth, not in just monetary terms. I think that's a very common thing that many people, when they think of wealth or abundance, they're thinking purely on, I just want more money. And yes, more money is great, but it's just another form of energy. For me, I want an abundance of time. I want an abundance of health. I want an abundance of love. I'd rather have those three things more than just an abundance of money, because money can't buy health, money can't buy love, and money can't buy fulfillment in your purpose and path. It can just buy you a bunch more material things. And at the end of the day, I think we've all realized at some point in time in our life that more things does not make us happier.
Yep, and that's some of the four measurables, or the fruits of a meditation practice. One of them is joy, and joy that comes from the inside, joy that isn't attached to me drinking cacao every day, or isn't attached to having the nicest things. It's joy that comes from inside. And when we tap into wealth consciousness, understand that money is, or the currency, a current, wealth is actually an energetic currency. And it just flows through us. As you mentioned, love, like love is an energy, love is a vibration that we get to share and we get to express to each and every person that we interact with. And here is the book here.
Creating Influence, Wealth Consciousness in the Field of All Possibilities.
Yep.
Deepak Chopra has written so many wonderful books. One of my favorites by him is called The Way of the Wizard.
Ooh.
And he gives, I believe, if memory serves me correctly, it's been a little while since I've read it, but it's 20 or 22 different lessons based upon Merlin's teachings. And it's kind of written in the perspective of Arthur being under Merlin's tutelage, and he's sharing these particular wisdoms and practices. And it's just, Deepak Chopra has such a beautiful way of how he lays things out. But we just maybe dive a little bit more into kind of how that book has brought you to that wealth consciousness.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So it's an A to Z guide, and I can start with, one of my favorite letters. Like, you can go through this book, and when he talks about looking at it, you don't have to read it to memorize it. Just reading it is enough to seed the intention of what you're trying to become. And so for B, it says B stands for better and best. Evolution implies getting better and better in every way with time, ultimately getting for ourselves the best of everything. So people with wealth consciousness settle only for the best. This is also called the principle of highest first. Go first class all the way, and the universe will respond by giving you the best. And how that shows up and has showed up in my life is, for a while, I grew up in a family that was like, oh, we got to save the bucks. Like, how many bucks did you save? Let's buy this t-shirt, 10 for $1. Like, look how many shirts we got. And that was programming that I lived under. But like, I was like, but I want the best. I don't need to have the most money. I just want to have the best. I want to have the best material. I want to wear real clothing. Like, I want to wear organic clothing. I want to eat food that comes from growers that I know, that I trust. And this book has helped me to understand that I don't have to have $1 million to choose the best thing for me in this moment. And if I buy a $30, $40 t-shirt that is going to be organic cotton, it's coming from an organization that I know I can trust and support, that cotton t-shirt will last much longer than those shirts that are less than $10. And I feel better each and every time I put it on. So like, this book has just reminded me of what my birthright is. My birthright's luxury. My birthright is being careless. And carefree. My birthright is a part of being autonomous. And this just helps to remind me that this is a way. Like, we are all kings and queens. We all deserve the luxury. We all can wear the gold. We can all wear the silver. And, even something deeper that I did not read in this book by Deepak Chopra, which helped me to understand wealth consciousness, was learning about the Incans in Peru. In Peru, like the Incans, they would give out precious metals. So like people who wore gold, they were known as people who shined like the sun. People who wore silver, they were known for their lunar-like qualities. It had nothing to do with the value of the physical metal. It was the value of who that person is and how they show up to the world.
Wow. If only we could cultivate that type of a mentality in this modern day society of being able to recognize each of us for that unique perspective that we bring out into the world. And that's kind of coming back full circle to what we were talking about at the beginning of the episode, in how QiGong recognizes our physical vessel in how it wants to express its unique way, instead of having to say, well, you have to fit in this tiny little box just like everybody else, when, you know, some of us are star-shaped, some of us are circles, some of us are squares, and we're not going to fit in that hole unless we are that same shape.
Yep. Yeah, it truly is that. And like uncovering that you are the creator of your reality.
Mm.
We are all artists. We all have expression, and our emotions, you know, especially as like you and I are both men, we have our own journey. It seems like men have their own journey with emotions, and that's okay. And it's also to work beyond our journey with emotions and share with everybody that emotion, energy, and motion is your expression. It's your art. It's your gift. It's your superpower. And as with every superpower, we learn how to use it so we're not just going off and yelling at people just because we're triggered, or we're not just like crying immediately because of X, Y, and Z, but we just get to be with it, notice it, and choose when to appropriately emote. Choose when to appropriately express. That's also what I think, like, what we're practicing for. It's like, what are we practicing? Oh, we practice, or we practice. And what's it for? It's for the moment. It's for life. It's for the experiences that we are not expecting. And most experiences we don't expect. What's the likelihood of an expectation turning out to be 100% the way you thought it would be?
Mm. It reminds me of the story of the man who stepped in dog shit. And it's recognizing that there's always going to be dog shit, and sometimes we will step in it, but it's how we react to stepping in it that really is the lesson that needs to be learned. And I very recently stepped in dog shit, and previously, even up until a couple of weeks ago, I would get very angry when that would happen, and I would either blame myself or blame my wife that it wasn't picked up. And you know what? We live in the woods. It's easy to miss it when it's out there, and sometimes it's covered under some leaves or something like that. And that's exactly what happened in this situation. I was walking our dog out in the woods, and I stepped in a pile. And I just looked down at it, and I was like, yep, that's some shit. And I just flicked it off of my shoe, and I kept on walking. And then I had the realization at how different of a reaction that was than it ever has been. And that just goes to show that as long as we continue these practices, eventually we'll be put into a situation where it gives us the perfect opportunity to choose a different way.
100%. And this reminds me, so thank you so much for sharing that. I'm curious, in the moment, what allowed you to choose to respond in this way?
Honestly, I chose humor. I smiled about it. And I just recognized that, like, I knew it was my job the last time to clean up the dog poop. And I missed it. I knew it was there. As soon as I stepped in it, I was like, yep, I remember that was a couple of days ago, and I didn't pick that up. And it's not my dog's fault. He can't pick it up himself. He just goes wherever he goes because that's just what dogs do. And again, it was my turn to pick everything up. So if there was one person to blame for that pile being there, it was me. And so I just chose to laugh at myself to recognize that, yep, I missed it. And it is what it is. At the end of the day, I can clean off my shoe. The shoe isn't ruined. And neither was my day, because that was what I chose, versus all the times in the past where I would get really mad and I would hold that anger around stepping in, because nobody likes stepping in poop. I mean, let's just settle that there. So, and then even more so, nobody really likes to have to clean it off of their shoe. But a lot of times when I got mad about that, it kind of wrecked the energy of the rest of my day. Because I stayed with that anger for a little bit. But instead, it didn't change my attitude whatsoever for the rest of the day. And I didn't even let it skip a beat. I just, like I said, I flung it off of my shoe. It wasn't very much, so it didn't really leave too much of a mess on my shoe. And I just kept on walking through the woods, just kind of wiping my foot here and there to just make sure it got off. And by the time I got back to the house, my shoe was clean.
Wow. That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Like, I'm hearing, you mentioned this was your job, so your past self, notice how your past self set your future self up.
Yeah.
And you choosing to respond with laughter breaks the karmic chain. And it reminds me of this story from one of Sharon Salzberg's books. And Sharon Salzberg is known as like the loving kindness teacher. And in this book, she speaks to how mechanical these practices might feel sometimes. So she was on a retreat for metta meditation, loving kindness meditation. And during this retreat, she wasn't really feeling it. Though she was in her practice, may I feel safe, may I feel healthy, may I be loved, may I be free from suffering. And she's going through that, feeling the mechanical side of things, not really feeling it. And she was going to go talk to her teacher about it. So before talking to her teacher, she was in the cafeteria. She had a tray of food. Something occurred where she stumbled, dropped the tray. Everything fell off. Everything made a mess. In that moment, in the past, she would have been like, Sharon, you're such a klutz. And though she's been on retreat, in the moment, internally, she's like, Sharon, you're such a klutz, and I love you. So that, it might feel mechanical. It might feel as if, oh, when am I ever going to, as you mentioned, like, when am I going to reap the benefits? We don't know until the experience arrives. And then the practice meets us exactly where we are at.
And I love that you said it's almost that my previous self set my future self up. And when you said that, I had the image in my mind of like my previous self laughing and being like, haha, gotcha. Because that's exactly what it felt. It was like that pile was literally there for me to step in, to see how I would react, and if my practices that I've been doing have actually been integrated. And I think that's a really important distinction to make, because we can do all of these practices as if we are just checking off boxes every single day. But if we're not actually integrating those practices and applying them to our life, they're not going to have any benefit whatsoever. We will still be the same person that is just practicing meditation, or is just practicing yoga or QiGong or whatever it is. But when we begin to embody those practices, then that's really where we start to see that benefit. And like you touched on, we don't know when that benefit's actually going to be. It might not be until a couple of years down the road. Sometimes that's how long it takes to get through these karmic cycles that are playing in the background. But if we do embody those practices, we will get there.
We will. And it's just, I like to ask myself, I like to ask people I'm working with, some of the students, like, what are you doing it for? What's your intention for being here? Why do you roll out the mat? Why are you here on a Monday night for yoga class with me? Like, what's your intention for being here tonight? Just to help re just to help get you into it, get you into yourself, and like, okay, maybe I haven't asked myself that, and it's becoming a habit. Like, this is just now my new habit. My new habit's going to yoga, and my new habit's going to be movement. And also, what's the deeper side to the practice that you might be missing out on just by moving with habit and not really, or going through the motions and not really connecting to the feet on the earth?
Mhm. Yes. Yeah. Really figuring out that why,
Yep.
that deeper why to everything that really makes life worthwhile. Because if we don't know why we're doing something, then why are we doing something?
Yeah. And then, if you're not aware of the why, you can easily begin to, especially with these types of practices, spiritually bypass your experience and be like, oh yeah, I just experienced trauma, and I'm just gonna go to yoga and practice my way through it. Not really acknowledge what I went through, not really give myself the space to be with it. But I'm practicing yoga, I'm practicing meditation, like everything's a-okay. There's still this, when tapping into spiritual practices, when tapping into subtle body energy practices, there still is the human. The human is still there. And it's important to remember that we are spiritual within a human experience. And we are also humans living a spiritual experience, the yin and the yang. Like, there's still this middle ground that we're meeting at. Our souls would not have reincarnated back into this body if we didn't want to live the human experience again and find a way to remember, uncover pathways to remember, and wake up to the fact that we are souls in a human body.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife Rachel gave me a shirt years ago that says, I am the universe experiencing itself in human form. And I've had so many beautiful conversations get started because of wearing that shirt. Because when people have the awareness around that mentality and that philosophy, it's almost as it's like a wink from God to kind of see that and be like, yes, okay. Yes, that is what life is all about, is just remembering that we are meant to experience everything that we can experience here. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here.
Hmm. Yeah, we wouldn't have the smells, the color, the taste. Like, we went for a walk yesterday and noticed a flower popped up from the ground, just like in this random spot. Like, this is so beautiful, and this is for us to experience with our eyes. The sound of the birds, it's a song for our ears to experience. And it's all created for us and one another, and all of it at the same time. Like, it's just divinely orchestrated. Whether or not we choose to believe that or not, like, whether or not we choose to believe that.
Yeah. And it's almost, I sometimes wonder when it comes to like flowers like that, for example, because, many plants that produce flowers, those flowers are only around for a short period of time. Same thing with mushrooms. The fruiting body that comes out of the mycelium from the ground is only around for a very short period of time. And when I notice those things, I now kind of have the awareness, and I ask myself sometimes, it's like, was that just for me?
Mm.
Did it pop up just so that the universe again is trying to test me and see, have I cultivated enough awareness to recognize something so small, something so insignificant that many would think that way? But when I see it in that moment, it no longer is insignificant. Instead, it's this grand gesture from the universe of, look at this beautiful thing I created.
Yes, I love that. That's so cool. And like, mindfulness practices, there's also like, a student asked a teacher in Japan, like, why are we doing this? Why am I meditating? And the teacher's like, So when you're walking the sidewalk, you can see the flowers growing. And as you mentioned, those gifts, those, and to me, I hear synchronicity
Mhm.
of this is the path I'm meant to be walking. And this path is actually very physical right now, 'cause we were both walking and seeing flowers. It's just like a sign of that's exactly where we're meant to be in that moment, in awe with all of life around us.
Well, I feel like we could continue this conversation for hours and hours and hours. So, to save the listeners from being stuck on this singular episode for a super extended period of time, Christopher, what is one last piece of advice, one last little nugget of wisdom that you could leave with the listeners?
What's coming to mind right now as you said that is to remember your feet. No matter where you are in any moment, just remember where your feet are. You could be in a crowded room and it's easy to get caught up in the room. Just remember your feet. Get back into the body. And it all starts where we ground. So if you're seated, the base, the sit bones. If you're standing or walking, it's the feet. And then from there, you have the choice of how you're going to walk, how you're going to move, how you're going to respond to each and every experience you're about to interact with.
You heard it here, folks. It's a fantastic nugget of wisdom. Remember where your feet are so you can know where you're walking. I love it. Well, Christopher, thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate your presence, just your integrity and your embodiment of all of these practices.
Thanks, brother, for sharing this gift and allowing me the space to share with your community, to share with your listeners. It really means so much to me, and I'm really grateful for it.
Well, much appreciated. And thank you all again for being here for another episode of the Embrace and Expand podcast. I greatly appreciate each and every one of you, all of your listens, the well wishes that I receive on Instagram. If you are not following me there yet, go ahead and check out adam.carberry or at Embrace and Expand. Would love to see you there, and we'll catch you on the next one.